Hello, welcome to my talk for the GDC Showcase about making marketing mistakes. I am super excited to talk to you about this because it's going to be a little bit embarrassing for me, but hopefully we will all learn in the process together. So as a brief introduction, hello, I'm Victoria Tran. I'm the community director over at Innersloth. We make a game called Among Us, and we've also made a game called the Henry Stickmin Collection. I was previously the communications director at Kitfox Games, which is a little indie studio that makes games like Boyfriend Dungeon, also publishing games like Dwarf Fortress. And yeah, you can find me on Twitter at the VTran if at any point during this presentation, like you have comments or questions or even want to share your own stories, I would love to hear it. Please, I'm so embarrassed by myself. All right. Okay, great. So for both teams that I've worked on, we were pretty tiny, right? So Innersloth is a grand total right now of recording of 5 employees, and Kitfox has a grand total of 9 employees. And from the outside, we certainly seem very successful, like in both studios. And as we kind of just like naturally worked our way into it and had no issues and we knew what we were doing the entire time. But there's a lot of hidden work and failure that has gone into this. And for me, especially to be able to learn how to market all of these different games correctly, which is what I'm going to talk about. So really quickly on the agenda, I'm going to outline like why we fail, how to fail, my own failures, which will be a little embarrassing, but it's fine, and then a little recap. So first is we want to talk about why you want to fail and what success really looks like. So success looks like a lot of different things for a lot of different people, whether that's awards or press coverage, a successful Kickstarter perhaps, or really a strong and new community following. It could be anything. Or even a ton of game sales, which is, a lot of the things that we consider success. But here's the thing. This is what success may look like to you, but it is actually built on just trash. So much trash. Success is built on the ruins of failures that nobody else has seen because they obviously just weren't picked up by the public, weren't talked about, or just completely forgotten about. Or at least that's what my success has always looked like. Maybe there's someone out there who has, a lot of success and no failure, in which case I'm very jealous of them. But for me, like the thing is, success isn't just built on like one pile of trash. It's built on so much trash failure, and sometimes even spectacular failures. But it doesn't need to continue being trash that I continually regret. It can become compost. Failure is more than just an embarrassing moment in my life that I want to bury. I can learn from it. And it's not just that. I can make me smarter, invigorate me, and a better, more well-rounded person. Basically, failure becomes the compost and fertilizer for growth and success. I want my trash to become a resource that feeds into the roots of my success and have it grow into an entire garden that attracts cows to give me even more fertilizer, and then I can literally milk failure for all it has and never have to find unexpected failure trash again. That was a very long-winded analogy to say that I basically try to really change my mindset towards failure. I always want to succeed, but when failure does happen, there is value in it, and I want to maximize that value. So fair warning, I'm going to dive into this a bit more, but I understand me saying failure at things is coming from like a very privileged position where the studios that I work for either were in financial positions where I can fail, but also that they cultivated a culture in the team where it was okay and sometimes even encouraged to fail. However, even if you're not comfortable and not coming from the same position or the environment is not right for failure, I think this content is still useful for you, either to help you with your mindset or to help encourage a better culture around failure and not just kind of bury it under the dirt where no plants can grow and I can't have my cow farm. Anyways, let's talk about how to fail, because there are different kinds of failures, some of which are more desirable than others. And we need to know how we'll actually milk the lessons for all it has. Okay, I think that was like my last cow metaphor. So first off, you want to do stupid things, but not actually stupid. I mean, more have fun and experiment. And we want to strategically create failures in the right places at the right times. There are basically a million permutations for how things can go wrong in game development and marketing, but very broadly, and according to the Harvard Business Review, there are three main categories that they fall into. So preventable, complexity related, and intelligent. In the first category, which usually falls into the blameworthy category, we have things and failures that could have been prevented, and they're very predictable scenarios. So these can be things like deviance, which means you knew A will definitely cause B, and then you did it anyway. Inattention, so things like me not reading over my own tweets and kind of sending them out anyway, or a lack of ability. You literally just didn't have the skills to do it. If you threw me at a game bug and I don't know programming, I'm going to mess it up and I'm going to fail completely. So in the middle, we have system failures, which are like game development and marketing, have a lot of uncertainty in their processes. And as we know, so often times things will probably go wrong during it. So whether that's due to difficulty, a lack of ability, and we don't need to consider any of these process failures as bad necessarily. That's kind of counterproductive. Avoiding huge failure means we need to be able to spot and fix small minor failures and not leave them unnoticed and bury them under the rug. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have what HBR considers intelligent failures because they kind of provide value and can help your studio leap ahead of the competition. These are things that require experimentation because they're new ventures. So, maybe you're trying out TikTok when it was first launching, exploring ads after researching them, an amazing new marketing campaign idea. These are things that are considered like trial and error, but it's sort of a misnomer because error implies that there was supposed to be a correct outcome in the first place when you're more so experimenting and seeing what works. So now we need to dive into how to properly learn from failures when they do happen. And for that, we need to talk about accountability. Accountability means we're asking what and not who. So who means we're usually trying to blame someone, like who did this, which is the wrong mindset. We need to ask the what in order to be able to learn better from our failures. So unlike responsibility, which is more like, the before, personal accountability is what happens after. So let's say you've made a mistake. All right, what are you going to do about it? We like accountability because you stop trying to blame other people and make excuses. Instead, you take the fall and you kind of ask what's next and decide what choices cause problems. The first thing I do want to acknowledge, which is the guttural reaction that failure will probably cause in you, right? There's a lot of shame. I understand it's very stressful. You might regret everything. You want to bury yourself in a hole, screw everything. You're an imposter. You don't belong here. All of that damaging self-talk. And it's very normal. And yes, we all know conceptually everyone fails, but with social media, it's hard to remember that. But everyone does fail, and you don't need to invalidate your feelings when it comes to failure. It's fine. You'll be fine. So maybe you have failed at one thing, but that doesn't mean you are a noun failure. So next we need to properly understand what has happened. After you get over that initial fear reaction, it's time to ask yourself these 4 questions. 1, what is the problem? 2, what am I doing or not doing to contribute to the problem? 3, what will I do differently to help solve the problem? And 4, how will I be accountable for the result? These are 4 really good questions to just start you off in terms of accountability. And please note, I said this before, the culture around failure is very important. It's not just on you, right? Hopefully your studio, manager, boss has created an environment where you feel safe being accountable for owning up to your mistakes. Or if you're in a, power position, you have cultivated that environment with your own employees. Why would I ever want to kind of be accountable for anything or tell you anything if the work environment makes it feel like a death sentence? And very importantly, you need to take accountability for your wins too. It's still nice and good to remember you are talented and you are there for a reason. You don't need to just take accountability for mistakes, take accountability for when you do well. Okay, so once we've taken ownership of the failure, it's time to dig into what we can really learn from it and kind of tear it apart like that. So the first way we're going to get insight is by getting as specific as possible about why it happened, and not just general first level reasons why something failed, right? So for example, I didn't read over my email before hitting send, and it had a huge typo in it. To properly understand it, you need to look and dig deeper into the second and third reasons about why something happened. For instance, I didn't read the email, but that's because I had an overloaded work schedule or I'm just not someone who often checks over things. So I really need to make sure I schedule in like that extra 5 minutes to do so in the future. The bigger the failure, the more likely there are intricate reasons why something failed. There's multiple events in different fields of expertise at varying levels of the studio. Understanding what happened and how to prevent it from happening again requires a really detailed, often team tearing apart discussion and analysis of the failure. Then one of the best things about failure is that it's usually very clear what happened, right? And it comes with a load of information. Survivorship bias is a thing when someone succeeds, but failure, when you fail, you're like, all right, well, that didn't work. It teaches us where effort is wasted and encourages us not to repeat the same mistakes. And there's two ways we can kind of learn from this. The first is informational, where it has a very definite, clear result that tells us, don't do this. The second is directional. It closes off a lot of different paths, but it also leads us to new adventures to explore. Ow, I just hit my elbow on the desk. All right, so finally, we have different types of failure, which I will touch upon pretty quickly. All right, so the first one is technical. Basically, this is about performance standard. It just didn't work. The community event didn't work because of some technical aspect. The system crashed, that kind of thing. Competence failure, which is based on your abilities or inability to do something due to a lack of training or knowledge. You just couldn't do it. The third is something that I think is very important that not a lot of people really take in mind sometimes, which is the moral failure. So that's like I cheated, sort of. Failure isn't just about technicalities. You could have succeeded at something, but morally you or your studio failed to uphold your own moral standards or your company values. And those are important too, right? So maybe your company made your sales goal, but you used really unethical marketing tactics that are short-term beneficial, but ultimately damage your reputation long-term. Fourth is parameter failure. This means it's okay, except it might have been over budget or too slow. So marketing campaigns often have multiple success criteria, which means there are multiple ways to fail too, even when some parts of it succeed. Next, you have hierarchical failure. This is when something may succeed in one level of the studio, but not in another. So maybe the marketing campaign was a success in terms of execution, but management wasn't satisfied with the value of the result. And lastly, you have subjective failure. In some cases, things just fail for non-rational reasons. You could have met all the correct criteria, but for reasons that were subjective or just not articulated to you, it's seen as a failure to some people. Finally, we're going to take these insights and grow from it. What am I doing? So first, we got to dig into what skills you have and which you don't. The insight you gain from the failure will be a really good sense of direction. Do you need to learn more about marketing, PR, time management? We're not born to do everything. And I have my own weak spots when it comes to marketing. And being able to acknowledge and know where we are in our skill tree of life is very important. And again, we want to be specific and proactive about areas we need to develop on. If you don't nail it down, vagueness kind of leads to inactivity. When something gets in the way, assess it, resolve it, communicate it, and do that all proactively to make sure your team or the studio are on board with your plan. This will also help you gain back a lot of the trust that you might have lost when you made a mistake. Another great way failure helps us to develop is it allows us to understand our expectations much more. I know I used to, and still do, actually, get caught up in saying yes to too many things and I get really afraid of letting people down by saying no. This isn't really the proper way to go at it. You need to set expectations not only for yourself, but for other people and what's expected of you. Being able to give proper time and attention to each task is important in making sure you minimize a catastrophic failure, but also that every project that lands on your lap is given the proper attention it needs to excel. All right. So we went through all of that. We learned about failure. So let's just go. Let's get a little bit embarrassed with me about my own failures to show you that no matter where you are in your career, it's going to happen. So the first one that is the most recent one probably are messed up tweets, and not just casual messed up tweets. Like I basically, when I was launching the Among Us Games account, the first day, my first 3 tweets, I think, on it had spelling errors. Just completely wrong. And also I had copied and pasted an emoji into Twitter and it didn't translate right and it screwed up into folded hands. Like it said folded hands instead of doing the folded hands emoji. It was an entire time. And people noticed, right? Because Among Us was big enough that people were noticing I was typing badly and not spelling core ideas in our games right. But honestly, it worked out and I did learn a lot from it. So the first is that mistakes are fixable. Mistakes happen to everyone. Some mistakes are, harder to fix than others, but it's good and human to make a mistake and people are used to it. Second is ownership. Don't be a spectator, be an active owner of your problem. When you take ownership for the mistake, you win back a lot of confidence in yourself when it does get better. And it just works out a little bit more. And third is inattention. Don't follow your own bad habits. I was really nervous when I launched the Among Us Games Twitter account, and I didn't read over things because I was nervous. So lesson learned, just take a breather, take a breather, and it'll probably save you a lot of heartache. The second is the Moon Hunters contest. And this was when I was working at Kitfox Games. Moon Hunters was a game we were developing, and we were basically putting it on the Nintendo Switch, and it was very exciting. And I decided, to do a fan art contest for it, right? And it was going to work out perfectly. I was doing everything as they say, you tweet it out, you put it on your social media, you have really cool prizes. We had 3 large prizes and I was so excited for people to enter it. And it was a really easy contest. You didn't even need to draw anything. You just need to take a photo, right? So 3 big prizes, and we got a grand total of 2 entries. I still hate this. We got 2 entries for a fan art contest, right? Great. Not great. So I was really embarrassed when this happened, especially because this was like my first console launch when I was a community manager. Felt a lot of shame, but I did learn a lot from it, right? So first is that I actually learned a lot about value. Every ask, even when you think it's small, like taking a photo, is a lot of effort from someone. And you need to provide even more value to them, especially for a game that's older, right? It was already out. A lot of people had already seen it, that kind of thing. Second is to grow. The only reason that I really did the fan art contest was because I had seen other people do it. And I didn't actually consider what was the goal of it? Did I really have any new ideas to bring to the table? And third, as I said, what was the goal? I didn't actually know what I wanted to accomplish because the whole contest really was just remarketing to people who already had the game or old fans. And so were the prizes. So it wasn't about capturing new people to be interested in our game. Even though that was what I wanted, I was more so just trying to ask old fans to take photos of a game that they already own. So who knows if they would have bought it on the Switch anyway, if they already owned it on PC, right? All that kind of thing. And the third mistake that I want to talk about, Moon Hunters really, really got hit hard by the Nintendo Switch announcement, was the Moon Hunters trailer for Nintendo Switch. So to explain, we had a little teaser that Moon Hunters was coming to the Nintendo Switch, and I really should have taken this video down at this rate. This screenshot here was the only time you could see gameplay of the game. The rest of it was a silly skit. And people noticed. People noticed on the internet, as YouTube comments do. They're actually kind of funny now, but at the time I was mortified that we had put out a trailer that, didn't have gameplay. Of course we needed gameplay. Why didn't we think of this? Why didn't I think of this? But we learn lessons from it, right? So first is to continue. No wallowing. What are you going to do with this next? What wrong assumptions did we make about the audience? And it's not the end of the world when something fails. And your team has already felt the failure, so they need to know, what are you going to do next? Second is audience. Fundamentally, we forgot who we were talking to. We weren't talking to old fans, and we forgot to, again, add value into our content. So now what I ask myself all the time is, why does this content matter? Why does someone care? So that was a really valuable thing to learn for me. And third was skills. I just needed a more holistic view of my own talents. And also because I was still sort of new, I needed to learn to speak up more, but also figure myself out. So that was the three like big ones that I want to talk about. But there's more than three in my career of community direction, communications, all that kind of stuff. There's so many failures, right? So really quickly, we're just going to go through a few just for fun. This one time I forgot to hit reply all to a giant list of confidential emails, or I didn't BCC them when I hit reply all for these confidential emails. Second is Imgur. I just am very bad at getting traction on that website, even though a lot of people talk about it being a great place to, share information. I can't do it, and I'm not really even trying at this rate. Third, I have emailed press with the wrong embargo date for different games at one point. That was very embarrassing. In community management, I tried to keep the peace in our Discord, and this caused a lot of people to be angry at me in the KitFox Discord, and they left, so learn from that. And when we announced Boyfriend Dungeon for KitFox Games, there was no Steam page that was tagged along to it, so we kind of lost a lot of wish lists, which is unfortunate. And there's probably so many more other things that I have forgotten when it comes to my failures, and I'm probably going to make a bunch more. Who knows? Cool. So now we're slowly going to the recap. Thank you for being with me for this entire time. As we kind of talked about, we want to milk failure for all it has, because you can learn a lot of valuable lessons from it, and not to be like completely ashamed from it and just try to bury it instead of learn from it. Two is how to fail. There's a lot of accountability, insight, and development and having fun that you can have with failure. And third is lessons, just learning our own limits and growing from it. And again, because I think it's very important, leadership and culture matters in this. Spotting big, painful, expensive failure is really easy, but in many studios, any failure that can be hidden is hidden as long as it's unlikely to cause any immediate or obvious harm. And the goal should be to surface those things early before they mushroom into a disaster, or before you realize that, oh, like this failure that you did would have been a really good learning opportunity for you and the team, possibly. I would love it if you would walk away from this, remember what mistakes you've made, and see if you can pick them apart to see what happened and actively think about how you've grown from it. And please feel free, again, to tweet at me if you do so. For me, failure is really important, and I am always trying to fail sometimes, because failure means that you're playing at your upper limits and you're trying. And anytime you're trying is a really noble and positive thing to do. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to my talk about failure. I hope you had fun. I hope you like my cow metaphor and all that kind of stuff. You can find me on Twitter at the VTran. I'm also at Among Us Game, technically. And I have a website, victoriatran.com, where I put a lot of my talks and articles up there. And yeah, feel free to tweet at me, to talk to me, be in chat, that sort of thing. Okay, cool.